Hi there, we're back, and we are in a devotional study of Psalm 91. And Psalm 91 promises us that those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the protective shadow, the protective shade of the Almighty. And again, let's start with reading the whole psalm. I'm going to read it out of the New King James Version, but follow along in whatever version you have. But if you might open your Bible to follow along with this, I think you'll get more out of it. So let's just read the whole psalm again, and then we're going to pick up where we left off last time in verse 3, I believe. Alrighty, let's go to this. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and strength. My God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will take refuge. You shall not be afraid of the terrors by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, or the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes will you look and see the reward of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord, who's my refuge, your dwelling place, even the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor any plague come near your dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over you. In their hands they will, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread on the lion and the cobra, on the young lion and the serpent. You shall trample them underfoot. Because He has set His love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. All right. Last week we were talking about the snare of the fowler and about this hiding place, this hideaway that we can be safe with God. And let's finish up with verse 3, actually, where it's talking about how God promises to deliver us from the perilous pestilence. So this word perilous is here. It's kind of an interesting adjective to use about this word pestilence. There's no real discussion. Pestilence is used the same way. Pestilence has been the bane of people's existence from, very early on. This coronavirus is of, what do they call it? It's novel, but the idea of pestilence is not novel to our planetary existence at all. But this word for perilous, it's translated from the root word, forgive me, it's translated from the Hebrew word havuot. It's from the root word hava. And hava, do you remember we were talking about the name for the personal name of God, the Yahweh word, Yud He Vav He. Do you hear? He Vav He. That's the same as hava. Again, it's that existence. It's the verb to be, to exist. But this conjugation or whatever of that verb havuo, it's only used 16 times in the Hebrew Bible, and it's translated almost as many different ways. Sometimes it's translated devastating or noisome or deadly. In the New King James, it's perilous. Sometimes when there's a word used very infrequently, it seems like the translators into English aren't always sure what exactly the Hebrew writers were referring to, but perilous sounds like a good description of a pestilence, right? We toy with it to our peril. But in this case, havuot, if something is perilous, it's interesting that it comes from this root word, to exist. And it's almost meaning the opposite of exist, like destruction, sometimes, or calamity. If a pestilence is perilous, it's dangerous. It's to our existence, yes. But somehow this verb gets conjugated in a way and used to describe the pestilence. But in this case, this word, sometimes it's used almost as the word desire in a bad sense, to covet almost, for calamity. Sometimes our enemies covet our calamity, our destruction. In Luke 22:31, Jesus says to Simon, 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 behold, Satan has desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. In 1 Peter 5:8, it says, your enemy, the devil, goes about like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour, the one he wants to eat up. So desire isn't always for a good thing. It can be a covetous thing for calamity or destruction to come. And that's, I think, a good clue about how this pestilence has come upon us, is that there's somebody who desires our extinction, like that we were talking about with the snare of the fowler. This might be a good time to talk about a theological idea that I resonate with a little, called the warfare worldview. And it's based, Greg Boyd says, it's based on the conviction that our world is engaged in a cosmic war between a myriad of agents, both human and angelic, that have aligned themselves either with God or with Satan. And in a lot of ways, this worldview is a good way to understand why there is evil in the world. Why is this perilous pestilence and the desire of the enemy of our soul getting away with this? Ephesians 6 talks about that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, or viruses or bacteria for that matter, but or even human systems, but against principalities and powers of the air, powers of darkness that desire to sift us like wheat. You know, some places right now you might hear people talking about this perilous pestilence that we're facing, and they are ascribing this death and destruction from the virus to God's plan. And though I am convinced that God will bring good out of this and redeem the time and draw close to his own through this period and be a very present help in trouble, we can say with the landowner that Jesus tells of in his parable in Matthew 13:28, when his field came up with a bunch of wheat, but also a bunch of bad weeds. And his servant said, what happened here? Why this happened? And Jesus said, an enemy has done this. And I think we can agree. When we see Jesus confronting, coming into contact with disease and disaster and natural disasters like storms and things, we see him combating those things, not planning them out. In Hebrews tells us that the Son of God, Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his nature, of his being. And if Jesus came to bring life and life more abundantly, and if he said in Luke 44:18, when he's quoting Isaiah, that he came to heal the brokenhearted, then I don't think we can attribute this to his plan, his best for us. Let's go and to verse 4 now. It says, he shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and your buckler. I love this thing. I've been signing a lot of my letters to people right now, under the feathers, and that's where you want to stay, is under the feathers. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. This is back to that bird image that we had with the snare of the fowler who's catching these birds. This is talking to us about where the bird can stay safe from the fowler, under the feathers. Take refuge under his wings. My daughter has these brand new baby chicks, and she keeps sending me these little videos of the little chicks. And she has this Australian Shepherd that's darling, and the Australian Shepherd honey bear just keeps taking these little chicks and hiding them under, she doesn't have feathers, but she hides them under her fluffy fur, and the little chicks love to find refuge there. It's really cute. But if we want to be under the feathers, if we want to be covered by his wings, we need to meet with him in the secret place, in that hideaway with him, and take refuge with him. This word refuge is used all over the Psalms, and if you just do a study of that, you'll find a lot of encouragement about who and how God can live with us through this time. His truth shall be your shield and your buckler. There's a lot of discussion about what buckler means. I'm going to use the one I felt was best. It's like, because it's some kind of a covering, like an armor and a shield. And so his truth shall be our shield. And you know, a lot of us have learned that we have to be more judicious in how much truth, quote unquote, we listen to on the news right now. I don't know, there's the truth of the scriptures about who God is and his love for us. And we need to put more time into that than I think we do into watching the news reports right now. We need to be informed. We need to know how to pray. We need to know how to protect the ones we love. We need to know how to support those that are on the front lines. Yes, we need to take this seriously. But it's with his truth that he's going to shield us and give us armor, not 24/7 news channels, right? And this word truth is some people might have it translated faithfulness, but it's usually translated truth, emeth. And to just be careful to spend more time listening to his truth. Let's go to verse 5 and 6. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Morning, noon, and night, God's with us, and he is going to give us protection. We don't need to be afraid. And let's stay with that. Excuse me. More notes over here. So, fear not. We don't need to be afraid. Fear not is one of the most common commands in the Bible. And I like that it's there a lot because it acknowledges our tendency to fear. And you know, fear is a God-given protective thing. If we weren't afraid of certain things like falling off of heights and, you know, getting, doing every daredevil thing that pops into our brains, you know, we'd be in big trouble. But the Lord is telling us that we don't have to be afraid when we trust in him and we're walking according to his ways. Remember that. We'll get to that in just a minute. But Ephesians 6:16 talks about the shield of faith, and that with it we're able to quench all the fiery darts or the arrows of the wicked one. And so we need to keep that shield of faith up. And there's nothing that can destroy faith more than just listening to a lot of people who don't know God telling you that the earth is going to hell in a handbasket, which, of course, the Bible tells us that too. never mind. But let's, one more word here in this thing, the perilous pestilence, this pestilence that comes in the darkness. You know, it's invisible, this little virus that we're fighting here. And this is a Hebrew word, deber, and it's used in verse 3 and 6. And then later there's another word that talks about the destroying plague. You know, the plagues like in Egypt, there was the plagues that came, the 10 plagues that caused the Pharaoh to finally let the children of Israel escape from their bondage in Egypt. I think we've got room for a little bit more. Verse 7, 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. You know, I imagine there is a lot of soldiers and people that have gone to war with this verse hidden in their heart or carried in their wallet. A lot of parents who have prayed for their sons and daughters that this would happen. But it shall not come near you, it says. You know, so many people hold to this promise in faith literally, and there's a good place for that. But in reality, we really know that many devout followers of Jesus have and will perish in warfare and when fighting this perilous pestilence. So how do we hold these two realities in one hand? How do we look at them at the same time? Is that the verse here says that these may fall on your 1,000 may fall on your left hand, 10,000 on your right, but it shall not come near you. I think that the trick here is, or you know, the truth is here is that we have to look at this with an eternal view. We have to hold an eternal perspective. 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." The Psalms tells us in 34:19, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." Does the Lord deliver us mortally, our mortal bodies, out of every affliction? No. From the very first stories in the Hebrew scriptures, we see many the followers of God falling in battle, to plague, to pestilence. We see many of the prophets being put to death by the sword. We see the early Christians being burned at the stake by Nero. Our mortal bodies are not always such that no evil shall ever come near them. But we have to say, it is, with the psalmist, Psalm 119:71 said, "Is it good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes?" Sometimes God will bring good out of the afflictions that we face, and he will teach us his statutes. He'll teach us to rely on his word and to hold on tightly to him through these things. And that even if we do fall to an arrow, to a pestilence, to destruction, that eternally we have promises, great and precious promises from God that will take us to a higher place, that will take us through this time of thing. The light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory in eternal life. So hold on to that eternal perspective as you're going through any trials you're going through, either right now in the spring of 2020, or if this is watched later on, whatever the trials come, God be with you. Stay under the feathers.